We've already covered the top 10 most brutal prisons in my previous video places where just the thought of escape hurts more than actually being there. But today we're looking at a few lucky ones who managed to do the impossible, break out. Some pulled it off with sheer cunning, others with an insane amount of audacity. But they all have one thing in common. Their escape was caught on camera, and we're about to break it down. So sit back, get ready for some jaw-dropping moments, because these are the top 10 most daring prison escapes caught on camera. Imagine a scene straight out of an action movie. 25-year-old Michael Maldonado, arrested for resisting officers and possession of a hypodermic needle, is being escorted to the Porter County Jail in Indiana. It's March 26, 2018, around 11:15 a.m. As the police vehicle enters the jail's garage, the door begins to close. Seizing the moment, Maldonado, handcuffed and barefoot, leaps from the squad car and makes a dash under the descending garage door, escaping to freedom. This daring escape was captured on security cameras, adding a cinematic flair to the incident. However, Maldonado's taste of freedom was short-lived. The following day, March 27th, he was spotted in Burns Harbor, Indiana. During a traffic stop, he fled from the passenger side of a car, but was soon found hiding in a wooded area near U.S. Route 20 and taken back into custody. While his escape showcased a flair for the dramatic, it ultimately ended with a swift return to the very place he sought to flee. Imagine a scene straight out of a comedy film. 30-year-old Amber Gonzalez, a petite woman standing 5'1" and weighing 97 pounds, finds herself in the custody of Waukesha police in Wisconsin. The reason? Allegedly pilfering a cell phone from a hotel housekeeper's cart and possessing a glass pipe commonly used for cocaine. Officers escort her to the station and place her in a holding cell, securing her to the wall with handcuffs, and thus begins her grand escapade. Channeling her inner Houdini, Amber decides that handcuffs are merely a minor inconvenience. Utilizing her slender frame, she wriggles her wrist free from the cuffs and begins exploring her surroundings. Soon enough, she spots keys dangling from a door, which conveniently grant her passage to freedom. Without hesitation, she exits the station and embarks on her adventurous journey. Her first stop? A gas station, where she conceals herself in a pine tree behind the building. An observant employee notices her climbing into a white Ford with an older gentleman. Together, they return to the very hotel where she was initially apprehended. The man compensates her with $80 for certain services. Hotel staff, recognizing Amber from the earlier incident, promptly notify the police. And so, just a few hours after her daring escape, Amber finds herself once again in the embrace of the law. On July 28, 2013, 34-year-old Derek Estelle executed a daring escape from the Garland County Jail in Arkansas. While on a phone call in the jail's visitation area, Estelle exploited a coordinated distraction, swiftly squeezing through a small service window and bolting out a side door, where an accomplice awaited in a getaway vehicle. The entire escape unfolded in mere seconds and was captured on surveillance cameras. Estelle's mother, 54-year-old Glenda Estelle, was implicated in orchestrating the escape. Authorities discovered her involvement after reviewing recorded phone conversations between her and her son, leading to her arrest on charges of assisting in the jailbreak. Harding allegedly distracted deputies, facilitating Estelle's swift exit through the service window. After several weeks on the run, Derek Estelle was recaptured. In 2015, he was sentenced to 32 years in federal prison on 2 counts of using a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence, related to a bank robbery and carjacking he committed prior to his escape. In 2017, at the Lincoln County Detention Center in Oklahoma, an escape attempt was set to be legendary. If not for one tiny problem cameras, 3 inmates came up with a plan straight out of an action movie, slipping through the ventilation system to freedom. They climbed up through an opening in the ceiling, crawled through the tight ductwork, and with every inch, They imagined taking a deep breath of fresh air outside the prison walls. The problem? The guards were watching them in real time. While the inmates thought they were making a grand escape, the officers were already preparing a warm welcome on the other side. Their big plan fell apart faster than it started, ending with a return to their cells and some extra supervision to make sure no future ventilation adventures were in the works. In 1995, one of the most daring prison escapes in Danish history took place in Copenhagen. A bulldozer crashed into the walls of Ridsløselille prison, creating an opening through which 12 inmates managed to escape. The whole operation looked like something out of a movie, fast, brutal, and perfectly timed. But here's where things get strange. The entire escape was caught on video. Now let's remember that 1995 was not the era of smartphones with cameras. Back then, mobile phones were the size of bricks, and video cameras were carried only by professionals or dedicated hobbyists. So who was filming? Was it just a lucky bystander, or an accomplice documenting a well-orchestrated plan? That question remains a mystery. Among the escapees was Brian Bo Larsen, a man who would later become known as Denmark's king of prison breaks. Born in 1974, Larsen was already an experienced criminal by then. After the escape, Danish authorities launched an intensive manhunt, and eventually he was recaptured and sent back behind bars. But his story doesn't end there. 9 years later, in 2004, he pulled off yet another daring escape. While working inside the prison disposing of leaves, he took advantage of a brief moment of distraction and hid inside a container that was later transported outside. By the time the guards realized he was missing, Larsen was already long gone. Then it happened again. In 2014, at the age of 40, he escaped once more, from the very same Ridsløselille prison. This time, he used a hacksaw to cut through the bars on his window. Once outside, he climbed over the walls using 2 rope ladders and disappeared into the night. Larsen's repeated escapes turned him into a legend, sparking serious discussions about prison security in Denmark. How could someone break out not once, not twice, but 3 times? His name is now forever linked to a man who simply refused to stay behind bars and always found a way out. Amateurs escape and get caught on security cameras. Pros? They film the whole thing themselves. And that's exactly what happened in Orange County Jail in Santa Ana, California, in January 2016, when 3 inmates, Hossein Nayeri, Jonathan Tiu, and Bak Duong, proved that with a little creativity and a mobile phone, not only can you break out of prison, but you can also turn it into a personal vlog. The escape was carefully planned. The inmates spent months preparing their way out, cutting through the steel bars in their cells, and sneaking through the ventilation system to reach the maintenance area. From there, they climbed onto the roof, and using a rope made of bed sheets, they lowered themselves to freedom. And, to top it all off, they documented the entire escape on a smuggled mobile phone. After escaping, they kidnapped a taxi driver, holding him hostage as they traveled across California for several days. But their freedom was short-lived. After a week on the run, Bak Duong decided to surrender and voluntarily returned to Orange County Jail. The remaining 2 escapees, Nayeri and Tiu, kept going. But a few days later, police tracked them down in San Francisco, and on January 30th, 2016, they were arrested. And as if their escape wasn't already infamous, a year later, in 2017, Hossein Nayeri released the full video of their breakout. It turned out that not only did they avoid security cameras, but they filmed the entire escape themselves, including their crawl through the air ducts, their climb onto the roof, and their brief taste of freedom. Most inmates dream of escaping, but few have someone on the inside willing to help. In June 2018 at Curry County Detention Center in New Mexico, 3 inmates, Aaron Clark, Victor Apodaca, and Ricky Senna, got exactly that chance. Their accomplice? Prison guard Serena Dodson, who had control over the security panel. On the night of June 15, 2018, Dodson allowed the inmates to pass through 3 secured doors and walk straight to freedom. So much for a high-security facility. After their escape, the trio hid for a week, but once investigators picked up their trail, they were quickly taken down one by one. Meanwhile, Dodson fled to Texas, but her freedom didn't last long either. She was arrested on June 19th in Lubbock. Once she realized there was no way out of this, she pleaded guilty to aiding the escape and smuggling contraband into the prison. In May 2019, she was sentenced to 9 years behind bars, ultimately securing for herself the very thing she had helped others escape from. In August 2019, in Rio de Janeiro, Clavino da Silva, a high-ranking member of Brazil's Comando Vermelho gang, attempted one of the most bizarre prison escapes in history. Disguised as his 19-year-old daughter, who had come to visit him, he planned to simply walk out of Bangu 3 prison unnoticed. The plan was bold but desperate. Da Silva dressed in a pink t-shirt, jeans, a bra, a wig, and a realistic silicone mask. At first glance, he could pass as a young girl, but upon closer inspection, something seemed off. His movements and nervous behavior raised suspicion among the guards. Instead of a successful getaway, Da Silva found himself facing prison officers, who recorded him as they ordered him to remove his disguise. In the video that later spread worldwide, he can be seen slowly pulling off his wig, taking off his glasses, and finally peeling away the silicone mask, revealing his real face, a shaved head, and a cold stare. Following this humiliating failure, Da Silva was immediately placed in isolation, where he was supposed to face the consequences of his escape attempt. But just 3 days later, on August 6, 2019, he was found dead in his cell. Official reports stated that he had hanged himself with a bedsheet, but many speculated whether it was truly a suicide or if he had been silenced due to his connections in the underworld. This bizarre yet creative, ultimately failed escape attempt became one of the most iconic moments in prison break history. On June 20, 2018, in Izberbash, Russia, an escape took place that seemed more like something out of a sci-fi movie than reality. Rustam Shakrutinov, a 25-year-old robbery suspect, squeezed his body through the tiny food slot on his cell door, and it was all captured on security cameras. The footage shows the slim, nearly naked inmate slowly pushing himself through the narrow opening, which was meant only for passing meals. In the process, he loses his underwear, but quickly gets dressed in the hallway before making his escape from the prison. His daring breakout earned him the nickname Snake Man in Russian media, and social media users compared his flexibility to the supernatural abilities of characters from the X-Files. It remains unclear whether Shakrutinov was ever recaptured, but his incredibly flexible escape remains one of the most bizarre in Russian history. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, one of the most feared drug lords in the world, carried out one of the most legendary prison escapes in criminal history on July 11, 2015. He was being held in Altiplano, Mexico's highest security federal prison, yet he managed to escape in a way that shocked the entire world. His escape was captured on a security camera placed inside his cell. The footage shows Guzman walking around sitting on his bed for a while and then heading toward the shower area, the only part of the cell not under direct camera surveillance. Moments later, he simply vanishes. In reality, there was a hidden tunnel entrance beneath him, secretly dug by his men directly under the prison. The tunnel was approximately 1.5 kilometers, 1 mile long, connecting his cell to a nearby construction site. It was not an ordinary escape tunnel. It was professionally built, equipped with lighting, ventilation, and even tracks with a modified motorcycle to transport Guzman and his accomplices quickly. The tunnel was dug using specialized tools and laser guidance, suggesting the involvement of skilled engineers. Mexican authorities were completely blindsided by his escape. Altiplano was considered one of the most secure prisons in the country, and Guzman was kept in strict isolation. Yet, his cartel managed to smuggle a GPS device into his cell, allowing his team to precisely calculate where the tunnel should emerge. The excavation took months, but the tunnel was so precisely built that its exit was located directly under the shower in his cell. After escaping, Guzman hopped on the motorcycle inside the tunnel and traveled to a nearby house, where his men were waiting for him. He then disappeared entirely, and for months, no one knew his whereabouts. His escape was a massive embarrassment for the Mexican government and raised suspicions that he had inside help from prison staff. After months on the run, El Chapo was finally recaptured in January 2016 in the city of Los Mochis, in the state of Sinaloa. Following this escape, the Mexican government extradited him to the United States, where he was tried and in 2019 sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In August 2015, at Benton County Justice Center in Washington, an escape took place that was so simple, it's hard to believe it actually worked. Gerald A. Hyde II, a 24-year-old inmate charged with methamphetamine possession, had just finished his court hearing and was being escorted back to his cell along with other inmates. No one suspected that, within seconds, he would be gone. Security footage shows inmates walking through a hallway leading to the holding cells, passing through an open gate. The guards were mainly focused on those wearing handcuffs. Hyde, who was not restrained, seized the opportunity. He casually backed up into the hallway, turned around, and sprinted away. It took several seconds before the guards realized one inmate was missing. By that time, Hyde had already rushed out of the courthouse. Security cameras later captured him removing his jail uniform and blending into the crowd. However, his freedom didn't last long. Just a few hours later, he was tracked down and arrested at a friend's apartment, only a few miles away from the escape site. In October 2018, at Lewis County Courthouse in Chehalis, Washington, an escape took place that looked like something out of a movie. Two inmates, Tanner Jacobson, 22, and Cody Howard, 28, decided they wouldn't wait for a verdict and took matters into their own hands. Cody Howard had been charged with motor vehicle theft and was awaiting his court decision, while Tanner Jacobson faced drug possession charges. After their escape attempt, both were additionally charged with second-degree escape, with Howard's bail set at $50,000 and Jacobson's at $100,000. It all happened in a matter of seconds. Security cameras in the courtroom captured the moment when Judge R.W. Buzzard was preparing for the hearing, while the inmates were plotting their escape. Suddenly, both men sprinted toward the courtroom exit and headed for the stairwell. Their hands were still cuffed, but that didn't stop them. At that moment, Judge Buzzard threw off his robe and chased after them. Cameras recorded him, dressed in a suit and shirt, leaping down several steps at a time in pursuit. Cody Howard didn't have enough of a head start, and Judge Buzzard caught up with him right on the stairs before the exit, grabbing him by his prison uniform and tackling him to the ground, preventing him from escaping further. Meanwhile, Jacobson managed to make it out of the building and ran through the city, but police quickly tracked him down and arrested him a few blocks away. Both men were immediately returned to custody and sentenced to additional prison time. Their escape attempt went viral after courtroom footage was released online. Judge Buzzard became a local hero for literally ensuring justice with his own hands. This incident became one of the most well-known courtroom escapes ever caught on camera. In 2019, Leonid Greiser, an 18-year-old Russian national, gained international attention during his trial at the Sherbinsky District Court in Moscow. Greiser was accused of murdering his 21-year-old sister, Ariada Karol, under the belief that Satan had instructed him to do so. During the court proceedings, Greiser made a dramatic escape attempt. While confined in a glass enclosure, a standard security measure in Russian courtrooms, he attempted to flee by climbing through the ceiling. Security footage captured the moment he removed his shirt and tried to squeeze through an opening above the enclosure. Court officers quickly intervened, using batons and tasers to subdue him and prevent the escape. Greiser had reportedly confessed to the murder, claiming he was under the influence of synthetic drugs at the time. The case drew significant media attention, not only because of the nature of the crime, but also due to the unusual courtroom incident. In the early hours of June 29, 2011, Trent Archie and Hardy McCleskey staged a violent escape from Walker County Jail in Texas. The two inmates, serving long sentences, tricked guards by requesting a phone call to their mothers. When a guard opened the door, they attacked him, stormed into the officer's office, and overpowered security. Archie struck a guard in the head, while McCleskey grabbed a set of keys, unlocking another door. Within seconds, they fled through the back exit, triggering a large-scale manhunt involving helicopters, special units, and tracking dogs. McCleskey attempted to steal a vehicle near a highway, but was caught within 4 hours. Archie made it farther, using forest roads to evade capture, but was tracked by police thermal cameras and arrested 12 hours later. Both were returned to prison under heightened security, facing additional charges for assaulting officers and escape. The entire event was captured on security cameras, making it one of Texas's most infamous prison break attempts. In 2015, in a Brazilian prison, one inmate decided that the best way to freedom was through the toilet bowl. Without hesitation, he climbed into the narrow sewage pipe, fully committed to squeezing his way out through a tunnel of filth. However, his plan had one major flaw. The pipe was not designed for a full-grown man, but for something much smaller. Determined, he pushed himself further inside until his entire body disappeared into the opening. But instead of a triumphant escape, he got completely stuck, with only his legs sticking out of the toilet. When the guards entered the cell, they were met with an unusual sight: a pair of legs flailing helplessly from the toilet. It didn't take them long to realize they were dealing with the first prisoner to literally flush himself away. Without much thought, they grabbed his legs and pulled him back into the real world, smelly, humiliated, and utterly defeated. There was no freedom waiting for him, only a cold shower, a locked cell, and most likely a lifelong nickname: flushed. In March 2013, two inmates, Benjamin Houdon Barbeau and Danny Provençal, orchestrated a daring escape from the St. Jerome Detention Center in Quebec, Canada, using a hijacked helicopter. Two accomplices posing as tourists commandeered a helicopter from a local tour company, directing the pilot to fly over the detention center. Once there, Houdon Barbeau and Provençal ascended ropes dropped from the hovering aircraft, a process that took approximately 6 minutes, as captured by surveillance footage. The helicopter then landed in a residential area where the escapees and their accomplices fled in a waiting vehicle, leaving the pilot unharmed. Authorities launched an extensive manhunt, leading to the recapture of Houdon Barbeau within 6 hours, and Provençal shortly thereafter. This incident was not isolated. In June 2014, 3 inmates, Yves Denis, Serge Pomerleau, and Denis Lefebvre, escaped from the Orsanville Detention Center near Quebec City, also utilizing a helicopter. The trio was apprehended weeks later and returned to custody. These high-profile escapes highlighted vulnerabilities in prison security protocols, prompting Canadian correctional facilities to reassess and enhance measures to prevent such incidents in the future.